Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsa Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Svam Sivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Radam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Namah Vishnupadaya Vishnaprastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sri Krishna
తేడా వస్తుందమ్మా. నిత్యంగా వస్తుందమ్మా.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariprajakacharya Stotra Sutasi Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariprajakacharya Stotra Sutasi Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we are going to discuss Srila Prabhupada's final pastimes. I will begin from his last day, which was November 14th, 1977. By afternoon, Prabhupada had fallen into an internal state of consciousness and the devotees placed tulsi leaves and Yamuna water by his head. The room resounded with kirtan, and the doors were open to everyone. The room was packed. Young, old, men, women, all were allowed to be with Srila Prabhupada and express their love. Several times, Pishima, Srila Prabhupada's sister, asked, "Prabhupada, have you eaten anything?" But he did not respond. She poured a few drops of Ganges water in his mouth. Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers, Ban Maharaj, Krishna Das Babaji, Anand Prabhu, and Prabhupada's godnephew Narayan Maharaj soon arrived and sat on the benches on either side of the bed, observing his consciousness. When Narayan Maharaj spoke in Prabhupada's ear, Prabhupada did not respond. But when Bhakti Charu told him that Maharaj and others were present, he slowly raised his left hand to his head in salutation and started crying. Prabhupada's godbrothers ventured that his attacks were simply the moving of the airs in his body. He was in perfect consciousness, they said. His time for departure had not yet come. After a while, all of them except Anand Prabhu left, promising to return the minute the devotees called. The Kaviraj, the Ayurvedic physician, said that Prabhupada had only 2 or 3 hours left. Pujaris brought tulsi flower garlands from Krishna Balaram and placed them on the pillow around Prabhupada's head. The devotees continued chanting and praying. There was nothing else we could do. When a final attack came at 3 p.m., Prabhupada rubbed his hand quickly back and forth across his heart. Upendra massaged his heart. Tamal Krishna sat holding his feet. And for the next 4 hours, Prabhupada was peaceful. I was at the head of the bed, wishing I could have one last chance to serve Prabhupada in his bodily form. Suddenly, he threw his arm back, and I was able to touch his hand and squeeze it gently. He had fulfilled my desire. I was grateful, satisfied, even amidst the overwhelming sorrow. As Prabhupada's departure grew closer, the kirtan, led by Bharadraj, became more and more intense. Sung, as Shaktimata later recalled, in a kind of unusual chorus of 2 parts in a way that we never sang before. Some devotees were singing Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, while others were chanting the Maha Mantra, and somehow the 2 blended together in the most perfectly beautiful way. We don't sound like this, I thought. This isn't coming from us. This is still a Shaktimata, it's recollection. It was like the room had no ceiling, like all the bricks and beams had dissolved and the whole room was open to a direct current to the spiritual world as Krishna's messengers came for Srila Prabhupada. At 7:25, Prabhupada opened his eyes and moved his lips as if speaking. Hare Krishna. Then his jaw dropped, his complexion darkened, and he went still. The Kaviraj took Prabhupada's pulse and held a cotton swab to his nostrils. There was no breath. Tamal Krishna wrote in his diary, our beloved Srila Prabhupada had departed. He had been surrounded by loving disciples chanting the holy names of Krishna, lying peacefully on his bed in Raman Reti, Vrindavan, the sacred land where Krishna and his friends used to sport. His head was pointing toward the deities of Krishna Balaram, his forehead decorated with chandan and a large tulsi leaf, with photos of Krishna Balaram and Radha Krishna, and pictures of Lord Nrsimhadev and Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj nearby. A volume of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita lay beside his pillow. Holding tulsi in his right hand, he had departed and returned to the lotus feet of Krishna, from whence he had come. It was 7:25 p.m. on Gora Chaturthi Tithi, the fourth day of the light half of the month of Kartik, 5 minutes after the beginning of Amrita Yoga, the most auspicious time of the day. Maharaja wrote in his journal, 7:25, Prabhupada enters my heart in a flood of tears. The sun of the world has set. The shelter of the world has entered Vaikuntha. Harinam continues on and on. The room was filled with crying and wailing. The kirtan was going wild, with devotees chanting Hare Krishna and Jai Prabhupada. Pishima, weeping piteously, went to the foot of Prabhupada's bed, lifted the chadar, and placed his feet on her head. Then he took dust from them and smeared it on her head and eyes. Other devotees followed, clutching Prabhupada's lotus feet. Most of the devotees were then asked to leave, and Upendra wiped Prabhupada's body, decorated it with Vaishnav tilak markings, and dressed him in fresh clothes. Devotees sat Prabhupada up, crossed his legs, and secured him to his palanquin. Bhavananda closed his jaw, which had remained open, and devotees tied it shut with a cloth around his head. Narayan Maharaj came, garlanded Prabhupada, and discussed with Tamal Krishna and Bhavananda what should be done. Then we carried Prabhupada on his palanquin into the temple, amidst the blowing of conch shells and beating of mridangas and kartals. He was brought before each deity, then around the temple 3 times, and again before Krishna and Balaram. Then we circumambulated his body 4 times with kirtan, and finally placed the whole palanquin on his Vyasasan. By Prabhupada's grace, even amidst the overwhelming feeling of sorrow, I was surprised to find myself experiencing a sort of ecstasy. Narayan Maharaj, Krishnadas Babaji, Anand Prabhu, and many of Prabhupada's disciples led kirtan and prayers throughout the night. While we sat, as we had so often, at Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet, gazing at his divine form. Narayan Maharaj began with Ye Anilo Premadana, Narottam Das Thakur's song for departed Vaishnavas, while Omkar performed arti and devotees offered Prabhupada flowers. Krishna Das Babaji sang in the middle of the night, and Anand Prabhu led Mangal Arti. That morning, the residents of Vrindavan awaited their last darshan of the great Acharya of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, who has spread Vrindavan's glories throughout the world. At 6:30, the Goswamis of the 7 main temples arrived to escort Prabhupada's divine form to their respective deities. He was sitting straight up, legs crossed, wearing his hat and chadar, in his flower-decorated palanquin, covered with garlands offered by disciples the night before. Narayan Maharaj led kirtan as we brought Prabhupada into the courtyard, again circumambulated his body 4 times, and began our procession with uproarious chanting, Mahasankirtan. Brajavasis came out from their homes and shops to watch, standing on the steps and balconies and alongside the road, calling out Jai Prabhupada to honor Vrindavan's favorite son, most famous saint, and international ambassador. Rajashekar recalled, all these hundreds of people came from nowhere. I couldn't figure out how everyone had heard about the procession, or even how they had heard that Prabhupada had left. I had never seen Vrindavan in such a mood. Everyone came out to pay homage. Wherever we went, the rooftops were packed. Bhagwat remembered, as we went from one place to the other, people were performing arti, offering flowers, and offering prasad. All of Vrindavan was displaying their love and affection for Srila Prabhupada. Tamal Krishna, along with many of us, was openly weeping. As we approached each temple, the head pujari would come out to receive Prabhupada, and the kirtan would rise to a crescendo, with Narayan Maharaj singing Jai Madan Mohan, Jai Radha Damodar, Jai Radha Raman, glorifying each deity, and then Jai Prabhupada. Even submerged in an ocean of grief, we devotees also felt proud to be disciples of such an illustrious, exalted, empowered guru. The parikrama lasted 3 hours, concluding when we returned to the Krishna Balaram temple. We brought Prabhupada to the Samadhi site near the front of the property, and Upendra and Bhavananda undressed him, leaving only his kopan, loincloth, and placed him on banana leaves. First Narayan Maharaj, then Krishna Das Babaji, and then Anand Prabhu poured Yamuna water over him. And Tamal Krishna then took the conch shell and, allowing the devotees to touch it, poured water over Prabhupada's body many times. The personal servants dressed Prabhupada in new silks and a new sacred thread. Narayan Maharaj took a tulsi manjari and with chandan wrote the Samadhi mantra on Prabhupada's chest. He, Anand Prabhu, Tamal Krishna, and Bhakti True descended the 8 feet into the Samadhi pit, at the bottom of which lay a pure white marble slab. They performed pujas, with Anand Prabhu chanting the mantras while guiding the movements of Tamal Krishna's hands. Bhavananda and Upendra lifted Prabhupada into Tamal Krishna's arms, and they placed him in a sitting position and offered arati. The devotees above, who had been chanting and blowing conch shells, then offered pushpanjali, throwing thousands of flowers upon Prabhupada's form. And, as Prabhupada had instructed, Tamal Krishna kept some to be taken to Mayapur for his pushpa samadhi. Devotees lowered brass buckets of salt, and we watched as Prabhupada's form disappeared under the salt being placed around his body, until all we could see was a golden patch that was the top of his head, and then nothing. As we passed buckets of earth to fill the rest of the samadhi, and with tears in my eyes and my arms trembling, I lifted each shovelful of soil. I reflected that this might be the last personal service I offered to Srila Prabhupada's Vapu. So many people had joined together in their love and respect for Srila Prabhupada. But even after his departure, the controversy over the Govardhan Parikrama continued, and the feelings remained strong on both sides. When Srila Prabhupada expressed his desire to go on a bullock cart to Govardhan Hill for Govardhan Puja, his disciples broke into two groups. One group, led by Srila Prabhupada's personal servants, Tamal Krishna, Bhavananda, Bhakti Charu, Bhakti Swarup Damodar, who at the time was Swarup Damodar, Das Brahmachari, all felt that Srila Prabhupada should not make that journey. They were concerned that even if we put a mattress on the bullock cart, but there were so many potholes in the road, he would be jostled on the bullock cart and he would feel pain. And it was even possible that he could give up his body on the way. But another group, led by Hansadutta and Bharadraj, felt that it was not our position to question the spiritual master's desire, but we should just execute it without trying to impose our own wishes or conceptions. So even after his departure, the controversy over the Govardhan Parikrama continued, and the feelings remained strong on both sides. I still couldn't determine who had been right, and the question remained in my mind. My usual practice had been to chant japa in Prabhupada's room when he was out. And the day after he was placed in samadhi, I was chanting behind his bed in a small corner by a bookshelf, when my eyes fell upon the new volume of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Part 2, that had been made for Srila Prabhupada with gold embossing. When I opened it, I happened to land upon chapter 9. Mother Yashoda binds Krishna. I read a few verses and purports, and then I came to a verse that I felt answered my question. Evam sandarshita yanga harina brityavashyata svavasena pi krishnena yashedam sheshvaram vashe. O Maharaj Parikshit, the entire universe, with its great exalted demigods like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Lord Indra, is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet the Supreme Lord has one transcendental attribute. He comes under the control of his devotees. This was now exhibited by Krishna in this pastime. The pastime was encapsulated in the previous verse. Swamatu Svinagatraya Vishrasta Kabarasraja Jisra Parishama Krishna Pasyatsit Sabandane. Because of Mother Yashoda's hard labor, her whole body became covered with perspiration, and the flowers and comb were falling from her hair. When child Krishna saw his mother thus fatigued, he became merciful to her and agreed to be bound. When I read these verses, I thought, this is what happened. The spiritual master was the transparent medium through which Krishna manifested himself. Of course, in Vraja Bhakti, the relationship with Krishna was different. Krishna exhibited Nar Lila, human-like pastimes, in which there was complete intimacy and freedom between the devotees and the Lord. Whereas in the relationship between disciple and spiritual master, there was always an element of awe and reverence and duty. Still, duty was meant to lead to love. Prabhupada had said to Babaji Maharaj, just see how much they love me. And during the incident a month before, when the disciples had appealed to Srila Prabhupada to stay longer, which meant him drinking, and he had accepted their plea, he had said, this is real affection. When I read the verse, I thought of the two incidents and put them together. In both cases, when the disciples had expressed themselves, we want you to stay, Prabhupada had approved, saying, this is real affection, and just see how much my disciples love me. All the devotees in the controversy had been acting on the basis of their realization, of their devotion for Prabhupada. And Prabhupada had been drawing out our loving feelings and encouraging us to go beyond just following his orders. Following the order was a given. There was no question. To follow the order of the spiritual master was a basic principle of spiritual life. And to disobey his order would be an offense against him and the holy name. So it was not a question of disobeying the order of the spiritual master. It was about developing loving feelings for the spiritual master and expressing them to him. Relating the verse to what Prabhupada had done with us, I saw a parallel between the Damodar Lila and the principle of spontaneous love. Every night during the month of Damodar, Kartik, we recited the Damodar Astaka, including Iti Driksa Lila Bir Ananda Kunde Swago Shamni Majantam Akya Payantam Tadiye Shita Geshu Bhaktair Jitatvam Puna Prematastam Shatavritti Bande. By such pastimes, he is drowning the inhabitants of Gokul in pools of ecstasy and revealing to those devotees who are absorbed in knowledge of his supreme majesty and opulence that he is conquered only by devotees whose pure love is imbued with intimacy and is free from all conceptions of awe and reverence. To this Supreme Lord, Sri Damodar, whose belly is bound not with ropes, but with his devotees' pure love, I offer my humble obeisances hundreds and hundreds of times. Then, maybe 4 days after Prabhupada's disappearance, on November 18th, Gopastami, the date when Krishna came of age and was given the charge of the cows, to fulfill Prabhupada's desire to go on parikrama and to have his association along the way, the devotees took a small brass deity of him to Govardhan Hill. And we all felt Srila Prabhupada's presence. After the exhilaration of the outing to Govardhan, during which we had felt Prabhupada's presence so strongly, I was again beset by deep feelings of separation. I was constantly on the verge of tears, and any slight remembrance of him could set me off. I was also concerned about our future without Prabhupada's personal presence. What would happen to us individually as devotees? What would happen to the movement? How would we function? I recalled an exchange almost 6 years earlier when we had been living in the Chatai hut in Juhu. One of the devotees had mentioned Prabhupada's ultimately leaving us, and Srimati Dasi had responded, "ISKCON without Prabhupada, it's hard to imagine." Looking for solace and guidance in Prabhupada's books, I came across a section that addressed the disappearance of the spiritual master. Srimad Bhagavatam 4:28, 45 to 55. Some passages encouraged me that my lamentation over Prabhupada's departure was justified, and some that I could regain his association by serving his instructions. Text 47 stated, "Being now alone and a widow in the forest, the daughter of Vidarbha began to lament, incessantly shedding tears, which soaked her breasts and crying very loudly." In his purport, Prabhupada had written, quote, "Figuratively, the queen is supposed to be the disciple of the king. Thus, when the mortal body of the spiritual master expires, his disciples should cry exactly as the queen cries when the king leaves his body. However, the disciple and spiritual master are never separated, because the spiritual master always keeps company with the disciple, as long as the disciple follows strictly the instructions of the spiritual master. This is called the association of Vani, words. Physical presence is called Vapu. As long as the spiritual master is physically present, the disciple should serve the physical body of the spiritual master. And when the spiritual master is no longer physically existing, the disciple should serve the instructions of the spiritual master. I was astonished. Srila Prabhupada was telling me exactly what I needed to know. Still, I had some apprehensions. How would I get detailed guidance from Prabhupada when there is a question regarding which of his instructions to apply in a particular complex situation, and what would be my qualification to receive such guidance. His answers began in his purport to text 50. Quote, "It is the long-standing tradition of the Vedic system that a faithful wife dies along with her husband. This is called Saha Marana. The wife used to enter the fire voluntarily. When Maharaj Pandu died, he was survived by two wives, Madri and Kunti. The question was whether both of them should die or one should die. After the death of Maharaj Pandu, his wives settled that one should remain and the other should go. Madri would perish with her husband in the fire, and Kunti would remain to take charge of the 5 Pandava children. This indicates that a devotee's wife must be prepared to act in such a way. Similarly, a devoted disciple of the spiritual master would rather die with the spiritual master than fail to execute the spiritual master's mission. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes down upon this earth to reestablish the principles of religion, so his representative, the spiritual master, also comes to reestablish religious principles. It is the duty of the disciples to take charge of the mission of the spiritual master and execute it properly. Otherwise, the disciple should decide to die along with the spiritual master. In other words, to execute the will of the spiritual master, the disciple should be prepared to lay down his life and abandon all personal considerations. The last sentence was my assignment, my challenge. Quote, to execute the will of the spiritual master, the disciple should be prepared to lay down his life and abandon all personal considerations. And the next two purports explained how the detailed guidance would come from the Paramatma. I felt purified and exhilarated. I got the guidance, the answers I needed in a most encouraging and empowering way. I went to share my discovery with Tamal Krishna and other friends who agreed that Srila Prabhupada was so perfect that he could provide all necessary instruction after his departure. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So now there's still some time left, and I would like to give the participants a chance to ask questions or share reflections. So if you wish to speak, please raise your hand, your physical hand or your virtual hand. Oh, I see 2 participants have raised their hands. Nagapatni, Mataji, would you like to call on one of them?
All right, I'm looking for them. You tell me their names?
Yeah, there's Anarpita Kripa Moidas and Chandan Sahu.
Okay, Chandan, please go ahead, ask the question.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Swami, Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you for this katha. It was very nectarian. now with some causeless security, I have come in contact with ISKCON, Prabhupada, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. So could you please tell like how to fall in love with this Guru Parampara, with Prabhupada and Guru Varga, and how can we make this life successful by loving a sadhu in this life? So what are some personal advice or instructions which you would like to share?
Well, the basic principle is that we should follow the instructions of the spiritual master. And when we follow his instructions, we get the result and we experience his mercy. And when we have that reciprocation with the spiritual master, we develop faith in him, and that faith, when it matures, becomes love. There are 9 stages as described by Srila Rupa Goswami. Ado Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sangha Tata Bhajana Kriya. So it begins with faith, Ado Shraddha. And that faith, actually all the different stages are further developments of faith, all the way up to bhava and prema. So we just have to stick to the process, stick to the order of the spiritual master, remain in the association of devotees, chant sincerely and attentively, study Srila Prabhupada's books, and Cheto Darpano Marjanam, your heart will be cleansed. And Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunai. Krishna Prema is eternally situated in the heart. It is not something to be gained from another source. And when the heart, the consciousness, is purified by hearing and chanting, that natural love awakens. So it's not artificial, but rather it's natural. And that love will awaken by following the instructions of the spiritual master, following the process of bhakti yoga.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you for that answer. Thank you. Dhanavad Pranam.
So there are some more hands. Of course, it's Anarpita Kripamoy, who I mentioned. Then there's Yagya ZXCA and Namrit Agarwal.
Yes.
Hare Krishna
Well,
Maharaj.
go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Dandavat Pranam. So
Hare
thank you
Krishna.
so much for your nectarian words. I am so fortunate. So today I got the opportunity for getting your very auspicious and inspiring association. So it is like a dream for me. I read in Lilamrita and I heard from the devotees. I watched the Abhacharan also. How the great contribution of yours towards the Srila Prabhupada. So it inspires a lot to me. So I'm very, very thankful for your this opportunity given to all of us. So Maharaj, my question is this. We are not having the association of Srila Prabhupada physically like Vapu. The Vani is available. When I see someone is having the association of the Vapu, then he comes with the association of the Vani. So somehow the Vapu helps a lot to follow the Vani, but we are having only association of the Vani. So how? So we can say that that opportunity we have missed, or it was not our fortune. But we want to develop such a affection and intense love for Srila Prabhupada, and the way we can serve more and more to Srila Prabhupada, how we can develop the same love the Srila Prabhupada disciples, to serve Srila Prabhupada, to serve our Guru, to serve this ISKCON movement. How this intensity and deep intensity come in our heart to serve Srila Prabhupada and Srila Prabhupada warrior. This is my first question. And if Maharaj, please you allow, I can ask more questions also.
Well, what's your other question?
My other question is that how, Maharaj, when you come in the ISKCON, that what thing inspired you a lot to give your life to Srila Prabhupada? Just nothing. I see that Srila Prabhupada disciples are like that. It is beyond my understanding and imagination. Whatever they have done, it is not possible easily for a for like an ordinary man. So how you have done so much miracles, extraordinary things. So that thing will inspire me to do something for the Srila Prabhupada. I can do something in this life. My life can become meaningful for Srila Prabhupada. And Maharaj, please bless me for this also.
Right, nice. Well, it is said that with the order of the spiritual master comes the potency to execute it. So if you take to heart Srila Prabhupada's instructions without ulterior motive, that's very important. But if you take Srila Prabhupada's instructions to heart without any personal interest, then Srila Prabhupada will bless you and he will empower you. And in that reciprocation, your affection and appreciation for Srila Prabhupada will grow and grow. So you should not hesitate, but you should give yourself fully to Srila Prabhupada's instructions, to Srila Prabhupada's mission, and be happy eternally.
Yaji, do you have a question for Maharaj?
I thought Prabhu had another question. Has he finished?
Yeah, we combine the two questions.
Okay, so Maharaj, Hare Krishna, what about Srila Prabhupada do you think made him successful expanding the Krishna conscious movement in the West? I know we read the books, but I never had any first-hand experience with him, so I just want to hear it from your perspective.
Yaji is from China.
Oh, nice. So what exactly was the question?
What Krishna? So what do you think, Srila Prabhupada? What kind of qualities of him that you think made his expansion of Krishna conscious movement so successful in the West? I just want to hear it from your side.
Well, one is he was humble. When we read the early accounts of him at 26 2nd Avenue, he would cook for the devotees. He would even clean up after them. I mean, eventually the devotees understood that he shouldn't have to be doing that, and they began to help. But he was so humble that he did everything for the devotees himself. And he was tolerant. He faced a lot of opposition, especially in Juhu, Bombay, when he was trying to establish the temple there. He faced a lot of opposition. And as he spent a lot of time in Bombay, and he was speaking on the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam every evening. And he spoke on a very important verse, describing the qualities of a devotee, Tatikshava Karunika Sridam Sarva Bhutanam. And he related those qualities to the efforts, to our efforts in Juhu. How, I mean, he was appealing to us to manifest those qualities, but actually he himself was manifesting those qualities. And they yeah, all of them came to play in that struggle in Juhu. So if you read that verse, you'll get an idea of what Srila Prabhupada's qualities were. Sadhu Bhushanam, the qualities of a sadhu, and specifically Srila Prabhupada exhibited those always, but he exhibited them as he explained in his talk in the struggles in Juhu, Bombay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Sharma.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Please kindly accept my humble obeisances at your lotus feet. Thank you for this experience of today's class. It was like we were there. Maharaj, I wanted to ask that, as you said, that we must give completely to Srila Prabhupada's instructions without any inhibitions. So we see his disciples were so surrendered. At one point, we read in Lilamrit that at an unknown station in a train, Prabhupada told his disciples to get off the train and start preaching in that unknown city, and disciples got off. And so I wanted to ask, how can we develop that kind of surrender to our spiritual master? How can we give up all inhibitions? I don't even recognize what are the inhibitions, or maybe we don't want to acknowledge. What is it? Please, can you help? How can we surrender completely to the spiritual master?
Well, surrender means to follow the instructions, and you know the way to follow the instructions is to follow them. But Srila Prabhupada also explained that there are three, you could say, levels of disciples. First class, second class, third class. And first class, he knows what the spiritual master wants, and he does it even without being asked by the spiritual master. The second class, he does what the spiritual master asks perfectly. And the third class, he receives an instruction from the spiritual master, but then he begrudges it, or he forgets. So we want to at least be in the second class to perfectly execute the order of the spiritual master, but ideally, we want to come to the first class, where we anticipate what the spiritual master wants, and even without his telling us, we do it. And in Srila Prabhupada's absence, we have to understand what he would want and do it. And then when we do so, we get his mercy.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Is Namrata Agarwal? Are you there?
Oh,
She's
yes, ma'am.
very much.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances, Maharaj. I feel so fortunate to get your wonderful association, and thank you for Nectarian Katha. It's really inspiring to see. That's what, just like Mataji said, the dedication and surrender that all the disciples had, like Maharaj and your contemporaries for Srila Prabhupada. So my question was like, we like know that our spiritual masters and gurus, they are on a divine transcendental platform. But sometimes this thought comes when the managerial, so much of management hierarchy is there, and they have thousands of disciples. We pray to him at his lotus feet every day. And when we hear about their health issues, we really feel so bad, and we always pray for their well-being. But sometimes it feels that we are so insignificant. I don't know whether my voice will ever be heard by my spiritual master or not. So how do I understand this and get a proper mood for that, Maharaj?
When you say you wonder whether your voice will be heard by your spiritual master, what do you mean?
Like Maharaj, like from personally, I can say from years, like I have been waiting for his shelter, but somehow I could not through management. So I've been praying every day that he accepts me under his shelter. So I don't know. I know he's on a divine platform. He can hear my voice. But then again, I feel maybe management and all these, I need to get my voice heard. That is.
Uh-huh. Well, do you have anyone who's connected with him who could recommend you to him?
Yes, Maharaj. Our name is already given for the initiation list, but like it's been many years, Maharaj. We are just waiting for his blessings. Uh, Maharaj.
And do you have any idea why it's taking so long?
Maharaj, actually, we were earlier in a different congregation, so that was not so well connected to Maharaj. But now we are connected to proper temple. So now the process has speeded up. But right now, like Maharaj is not in India, so maybe once he comes down to India, he will surely bless us. That's what that anticipation is growing so much on us. Like we really want it desperately. Every day I'm just praying and crying at his lotus feet to accept a fallen soul like me.
Well, it sounds like he will. It's just a matter of time. So you have to be patient and chant very sincerely. Cleanse your heart, prepare yourself. It's not a joke to be initiated. So you can take it that maybe you have to prepare yourself more to become more purified so that you're not a burden on the spiritual master, but rather more of a help to the spiritual master. I mean, I'm sure you wouldn't be a burden, but yeah, I would suggest take it as an opportunity to purify yourself some more and become more qualified before you're initiated. But it sounds like it's just a matter of time, and you will be.
Thank you, Maharaj. Please bless us, Maharaj. Surely your blessings and prayers will work for me, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Okay. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Priscilla Das, please unmute and
Yes,
ask.
please accept my humble obeisances, Maharaj. Maharaj, I want to ask this question. What difference do you find the ISKCON which was in Prabhupada's presence and ISKCON now, Maharaj? So I just want to figure out what was the energy when Prabhupada was there personally. So what difference do you find ISKCON with Prabhupada? I mean, obviously Prabhupada's physically there, and after Prabhupada departed to spiritual world.
Well, when Srila Prabhupada was present, there was, tremendous enthusiasm in the devotees to serve him. And now there may be but not always. But that also depends on the individual. Srila Prabhupada said that that enthusiasm comes from following the regulative principles. So if we follow the regulative principles, chanting and of course the 4 regulative principles and reading, then we will be enthusiastic. And sometimes I see devotees who have that enthusiasm, like we did when Srila Prabhupada was present. So it is possible. And, one thing that Srila Prabhupada emphasized was that we should cooperate. You might have heard Srila Prabhupada say that your love for me will be shown by how you cooperate to keep this institution after I depart. And so we always have that chance to show our love for Srila Prabhupada by cooperating with our authorities, with our peers, even with our juniors. That is a very important instruction. Where did that devotee go?
Could I ask another question, Maharaj? I mean, I'm very happy with the answer, Maharaj. Maharaj, just like now we see, we have a spiritual master. He has a spiritual role, and many spiritual masters, they are also playing the role as a manager, GBC, some administrative role as well. So what we hear, there's a conflict of could be a conflict of interest. I mean, sometimes we may be getting instruction from spiritual master through a managerial role, and institution also has its own institutional needs. So one is doing the needful and finding your own nature. There's always a conflict in that. So Maharaj, how do we resolve that? Is it coming from spiritual master through a spiritual inspiration, or is it coming from manager?
Well, I remember after, initially Srila Prabhupada named 11 gurus, and then gradually more devotees were given that responsibility to initiate. So His Holiness Shivaram Swami asked His Holiness Satsvarupa Das Goswami what advice he has for him as a new spiritual master to be. And Satsvarupa Maharaj replied that he sometimes gave instructions to disciples to fulfill managerial needs. And in retrospect, he regretted that. And so his advice to Shivaram Swami was that he should not give instructions to disciples to fulfill some managerial necessity if there is a chance that that instruction could be go against the disciple's spiritual welfare. So that is a very a tricky situation when the guru is also a manager for a disciple. But I think that the guru should be very careful in that situation not to to give an instruction to a disciple for the sake of managerial expedience, if the instruction could have an adverse effect on the spiritual mass, on the disciple's spiritual life. But, you know, it's hard to say. Srila Prabhupada, he gave me a lot of instructions that were very difficult, that were not really congenial to my nature, so to speak. But, you know, I had faith in Srila Prabhupada that whatever he did was the best for all concerned. And so even though following those instructions was a struggle sometimes, you know, it was worth it.
Well, thank you for your wonderful answer. I just wanted to have one clarification the same. I think Prabhupada personally told you this movement would grow by if you organize intelligently. Maharaj, what is this meaning of organization? Because organization means so much rules and manager setup also. And there's a repercussion of organized religion as suggested by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So how do you define this organization in intelligently designing or organizing things so that ISKCON will grow? What is meant by Prabhupada to say like this, Maharaj? Could you explain this?
What did you say about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur? I missed that.
He suggested this idea, organized religion. I mean, there are repercussions of organizing things in religion because that comes to institutional needs and finding one's own nature, which you just mentioned. Things may not be congenial to your nature, but you're forced to do it.
Yeah. So to give the background of the incident to which you alluded, in Srila Prabhupada's last days, maybe 3 days before he left, I was taking rest on the rooftop of the Gurukul building, and a devotee came and woke me up and said that Srila Prabhupada was calling for me. So I went into his room. He was lying on his bed, and he asked me, so what do you think? After I'm gone, do you think this movement will go on? And I replied, if the devotees are sincere and chant their rounds and follow the regulated principles, it will go on. And then Srila Prabhupada, and he was very weak, and his voice was very soft, but with great difficulty, he said, organization, intelligence, and organization. And I understood that, yes, for our own spiritual lives, we have to be sincere and chant our rounds and follow the regulated principles. But Prabhupada wanted us to think beyond our own spiritual well-being for the spiritual well-being of others, to spread Krishna consciousness. And to do so, we need organization, intelligence, and organization. And that involves planning, like my dear godbrother, His Holiness Sridhar Swami Maharaj used to quote, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So we need to plan, you know, how to spread Krishna consciousness, how to attract new people, how to encourage them, how to nourish them. Srila Prabhupada also said on occasion, it's more important to maintain a devotee than to try to make new devotees. So that's very much part of our responsibility to maintain the devotees, to nourish the devotees. Yeah. So does this address your concern?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Somanath Nandi, please unmute and ask your question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Maharaj, my question is, first of all, I would like to thank you for this wonderful class. Maybe in the decade to come, most of Srila Prabhupada's disciples won't be there. So, what do we do, Maharaj, now to strengthen our research so that we don't miss the gap and we are able to follow their orders and carry on with it?
The sound wasn't so good. I mean, I got the first part, which is true, that, in the next decade or so, most of Srila Prabhupada's disciples will be gone. But then what was the next part? What was your question?
Maharaj, my next part was that how do we prepare ourselves for that, and what do we do now to ensure that we don't feel the gap and we are able to have enough faith on the parampara and everything that goes on so that we can push on the movement?
Well, you should take advantage of the association of Prabhupada's disciples who are here with us now and learn from them about Srila Prabhupada and his mood, and also learn from them, the mood of surrender and service to Srila Prabhupada, so that you can continue that line. I mean, certainly it's hard to imagine the planet without any direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada. But that day will come. And then it will depend on the next generations to maintain Srila Prabhupada's spirit and mood and desires and instructions.
Thank you. Ambika Devi Dasi, please unmute and ask your question.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Maharaj and Nagabhatna Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances and thank you for this wonderful class. I wanted to ask a simple question about the time of leaving the body. If we are present when another person, a family member or a devotee leaves the body, what should we actually do?
Yes. Of course, the goal is Ante Narayana Smriti, to remember Narayan or Krishna at the end, at the time of death. And generally, the best way is with chanting. And in practically every tradition, the family members and loved ones are advised to chant the holy names when their family member or loved one is in the process of leaving the body. I would preach in Pakistan, and there I came across a book called The 99 Names of Allah. Just like we have the 1,000 names of Vishnu Sahasranam. So they have the 99 names of Allah. And in that book, it says that the best thing, that a Muslim can do when a loved one is leaving the world is to sing the names of God. And somehow or other help the person, remember God at the time of death. And there are other things in relation to Srila Prabhupada. to give them tulsi, give them Ganges water, Jamuna water. It's a very sacred time, very important time. And I'm friends with a Jewish rabbi in Santa Barbara. And once he told me, you might be surprised, but I find when I'm ministering to someone who's leaving the body, that I enter into a sacred space. I said, I'm not surprised. I also have the same experience. And there are books that can give you guidance. Gita Dasi wrote a nice book called, I think, The Final Journey. And I wrote a book called Life's Final Exam, Death and Dying from the Vedic Perspective. And those will give you an idea of what best you can do for someone, a devotee or a family member who is leaving the body.
Right. Thank you, Maharaj. Simran, please unmute and ask your question.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you so much for such a wonderful class. It was such a heart-moving experience hearing about Srila Prabhupada's final pastimes from you. My question was that at the time of Srila Prabhupada's departure, you mentioned that the devotees were chanting Jai Prabhupada and they were chanting the Maha Mantra, and the two of them blended together. So in what way does Srila Prabhupada inspire your personal japa practice? And do you often find yourself meditating upon the time that you had in his physical presence while you chant?
Well, everything we do in bhakti, by definition, is to please Krishna, including our japa. Personally, I chant, I always chant in front of Tulsi Devi, and when I'm at my ashram, I chant in front of my deities, which includes the deity of Srila Prabhupada. And so we should be in the mood of chanting to please our spiritual authorities. Tamal Krishna Goswami told me that Vishnu Jan Maharaj, he had a picture of a large photo of Srila Prabhupada's ear. And when he would chant his japa, he would chant into Srila Prabhupada's ear, in the mood that he's chanting for Srila Prabhupada to give him pleasure. So I know that Prabhupada is pleased when we chant. That in and of itself gives him pleasure. And of course, if we can chant with more, attention, with more feeling, then he'll be more pleased.
Jai. Irina, please unmute and ask your question.
Hey Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for this great opportunity and to bring us to that such auspicious moment, like we were there with you. And thank you, Mataji Nagapatni, for bringing such a auspicious speaker to us to give us such a mercy. My question is kind of inspired by the previous question. Because I was thinking about that today as well, when the Srila Prabhupada's direct disciples will leave this planet. How do we not get lost in instructions? Because from what I've observed in after Srila Prabhupada's departure, everyone would look into the lectures and scriptures written by Srila Prabhupada, which was the golden standards of everything, instructions on everything. But there was a second part of his mood in a personal connection. He would feel everyone's heart, therefore he knew, accept, or like say it's okay to do this, or actually push the gas and say no, that's what you're supposed to be doing. So like this flexibility of feeling each other's hearts, I think that part was kind of a little bit lost after Srila Prabhupada's departure. That's why it was very kind of all these strict rules and everyone were chaotic. So I'm afraid that if that's the history repeat themselves against on that, so how do we avoid that and keep that sweetness? And as you said, we need to maintain the existing devotees. That's our main goal. I don't know, I'm just worried if you have some inside something for me right now. Krishna.
Yes, we want to, as far as possible, maintain that family mood that we had with Srila Prabhupada, and the friendly relation that we had with one another. And there's a wonderful purport in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in which Srila Prabhupada explains what should be our mood. And in fact, I think I'll read a little from that. It's so instructive, and it also suggests, what we should do now and in the future. Just one moment.
Where is this from, Maharaj?
It's 7th canto. Can't believe that I keep mistyping. Okay. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.12. It's a long purport, but the last paragraph is especially instructive and relevant. Srila Prabhupada writes, everyone should be friendly for the service of the Lord. Everyone should praise another's service to the Lord and not be proud of his own service. This is the way of Vaishnava thinking, Vaikuntha thinking. There may be rivalries and apparent competition between servants in performing service, but in the Vaikuntha planets, the service of another servant is appreciated, not condemned. This is Vaikuntha competition. There is no question of enmity between servants. Everyone should be allowed to render service to the Lord to the best of his ability, and everyone should appreciate the service of others. Such are the activities of Vaikuntha. Since everyone is a servant, everyone is on the same platform and is allowed to serve the Lord according to his ability. And Srila Prabhupada elaborates. But I find that to be a very important instruction for all of us about how we should relate to one another in Krishna consciousness. And as I discovered after Srila Prabhupada left, the instructions I needed were there in his books, and I'm sure that in the future and next generations will find the same to be true. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Patnam, please unmute and ask your question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Maharaj, I have questions like you said that when Prabhupada was there, you had a personal guidance. Whatever questions you had or whatever decisions you can interact with Prabhupada. But after he left the planet, how actually you are getting guidance, Maharaj? And it's applicable for all of us. Like now, Prabhupada is all of us Shiksha Guru, and he's not present in our planet. How do we have to get guidance, Maharaj? Please advise, Maharaj.
On a number of occasions, Srila Prabhupada recommended offenseless chanting. Satsvarupa Maharaj asked Srila Prabhupada, now you're here, so we can approach you with our questions, but what about when you're not here? How will we get answers? And Srila Prabhupada replied, the holy name of Krishna and Krishna himself are the same. Do you understand this fact? And in other contexts also, Srila Prabhupada gave similar answers that we can get our questions answered by offenseless chanting. But beyond that, we can also consult devotees. Srila Prabhupada said that when there's an assembly of devotees who are our well-wishers, and they give us some advice, not just well-wishers, but also, wise and experienced, and they give us some advice, we should take it as Krishna. So, yeah, I would say those two things. We can get answers from the chanting and from other devotees, the right devotees in the right context.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you, Lord. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Shivani, please unmute and ask your question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances at your lotus feet, Maharaj. Thank you so much for your inspiring lecture and your enchanting Kirtan, Maharaj. So, Maharaj, I feel so blessed just by having your darshan, Maharaj. So, Maharaj, my question is, Maharaj, and I'm so thankful and indebted to Nagapatni Mataji for arranging this, Maharaj. Maharaj, my question is that I'm into this movement for past 5-6 years, Maharaj, and I've done 2 courses from VIHE and by my spiritual master's advice, and by his advice, I'm also doing a little bit of preaching, Maharaj, so a little bit, but very little, of course, Maharaj. But still, I understand many facts like I'm not this body, I'm the soul. I understand, but I'm not able to practically put it, Maharaj. Like I feel I'm still so much of materially attached, Maharaj. So how do I get out of it, Maharaj? I know that I want to progress, but still I'm like clinging, still clinging to this material things, Maharaj. So how do I come out of this, Maharaj? Thank you, Maharaj.
Well, when you say you're clinging to material things, what do you mean?
Like maybe I want to buy more things for myself, and uh, so I'm still, like the material thinking I have.
And those material things, or so-called material things, can they be used in Krishna's service?
Like I want to buy dresses for myself, and look good like other, I mean, and also I am very much attached to Krishna. At the same time, I feel I'm still attached to myself, Maharaj.
Maybe you should give yourself a quota of how much you buy for yourself. Like one of Srila Prabhupada's early disciples was Shamsundar Prabhu, and he used to smoke cigarettes, maybe 2 packs a day. And Srila Prabhupada told him to reduce by 1 cigarette every day. And then eventually he stopped smoking by 1 cigarette a day. So maybe you can set some like quota for yourself and reduce this, this addiction to buying things for yourself unnecessarily. Yeah, I mean, it is an offense against the holy name to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions in the matter. So when you chant, you should be in the mood of getting free from these attachments. It's not an offense to have the attachments. It's an anartha, but it's not an offense. But by chanting, you're meant to become free from these attachments. And so if you maintain those attachments, while chanting, it's contradictory and offensive to the holy name. So, yeah. I mean, when you think about it, these are petty things. It's not worth indulging in them, when it's coming in the way of your spiritual progress.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. So with your words, maybe they enter my heart and change me, Maharaj. Maharaj kindly blesses, Maharaj, bless all of us, and that we progress in the right path.
I will. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Pratik Agwa, would you like to ask your question now?
Hare Krishna. If time allows, Mataji, it would be.
Yes.
Sound not so good, so be careful. We're getting a lot of background noise.
Shall I ask?
Yes, please ask.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for such enlivening lecture today. I was actually reading your book, I'll Build Your Temple, and it is such a gem. It is going to be law book for managers for centuries to come. It has so many lessons for all of us. Thank you so much. My question actually was regarding a previous question that was asked. in regards to surrender to Guru.
Can you put on your video? Is there any reason?
I'm actually in the car, not driving.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay.
Sorry, Maharaj. So my question was regarding surrender and shelter for Guru. There are external acts of service that we do that help us connect to our Guru. But what should be our internal moves when we want to connect to Guru and the Parampara? How do we do it internally? Externally, we do it through services that we render. And I feel at many times those are mechanical services because we don't have the proper attitude and internal mood. How shall we develop that internal mood and attitude for seeking shelter from us?
Well, our internal mood should be that to be an instrument in their hands. As Srila Prabhupada wrote in his beautiful prayer when he arrived in America, marking Bhagavad Dharma, that he prayed to be a puppet in the hands of the Lord, and we could be a puppet in the hands of our spiritual master. And he said, "Oh Lord, make me dance, make me dance. Oh Lord, make me dance as you wish." So that should be our internal mood, that we want to be a puppet in the hands of our superiors. And be an instrument to execute their will. Yeah, and pray to be a good instrument in their hands.
All righty. We're down to our last question. Nilambari Radhika Devidasi, please unmute and ask your question.
Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. Giriraja Svami Maharaj and Nagapatni Mataji. Mataji, I wanted to ask, Maharaj, before Srila Prabhupada, he left this world, did he have any kind of like dreams or anything, or premonitions, as you say? And was there any last instructions before he left?
Oh, did who have any dreams or premonitions?
Srila Prabhupada himself.
Oh, I never heard that in relation to his last days, but medically it was quite clear that he would be leaving soon. And as far as his last instructions, he gave many in those days. I mean, he gave me that personal instruction about organization, intelligence and organization. And he gave many instructions when his godnephew, Narayan Maharaj, came. He requested Srila Prabhupada to instruct his disciples not to fight. And Srila Prabhupada said, something like, I've given directions in my books and in my will. So everything is there. And don't fight. And again, that instruction, your love for me will be shown by how you cooperate after I leave. And well, you've been reading Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, and you've come to the end, and that's the occasion upon which Nagapatni Devidasi invited me. And so, yeah, study the Lilamrita, and my book, you know, much of what I said tonight came from my book. I'll Build You a Temple, the Juhu story. Although the focus is Juhu, but it really covers everything about Srila Prabhupada during that period, including, yeah, there's some nice, well, nice accounts of his visit to the Mahakumbha Mela in Allahabad in 1977, and also about his last days in Vrindavan. So, yeah. And as I mentioned, a lot of what he did at the end was to draw out our love for him. It was there, but he and as Srila Prabhupada said, excuse me, as Tamal Krishna Goswami said that one night when Srila Prabhupada was proposing to go on the bullock cart to Govardhan Hill. So Tamal Krishna and Bhavananda were meeting upstairs. That's a whole story. Meanwhile, Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj came, and Bhakti True Swami arranged to give him prasad in another room so he could speak with him and request him to prevail upon Srila Prabhupada not to go on bullock cart to Govardhan Hill. And when Tamal Krishna Goswami and Bhavananda came down to Srila Prabhupada, they said, you know, Srila Prabhupada, the way you're dealing with us is drawing out our love for you at every moment. And Srila Prabhupada replied, that is my duty. So, I mean, we have, you know, rules and regulations and varieties of devotional service, but our ultimate goal is to develop love.
Hi, Maharaj, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to see you. I haven't seen you for so long. I hope to see more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Giriraj Maharaj. This is Prashanta Devidasi speaking here. Accept my obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. I'm smiling now, but I wasn't smiling in the beginning when you were doing the narration of Prabhupada's passing. I think thank you is a very small word. The narration was so poignant and filled with instructions and how to understand, how to proceed with the Hare Krishna movement and with our personal life without the presence of Srila Prabhupada. So we make an appeal on this day that you may come back again and again at the VIHE to instruct us, and we appreciate your association very much, Maharaj. It was absolutely wonderful, and we learned a lot, and as you see, there were many practical questions, so I'm very grateful. Thank you so much for coming, and please do come again. I hope you can make some time. We have students, you know, people who are very eager to learn on different levels, all the way from the Bhakti Sadachar to the Bhakti Vedanta and soon the Bhakti Sarvabhauma. So we need the association of the leaders of our society. So,
yes. Need to serve you.
Hari 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 Bol, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Holiness Giriraja Maharaj ki jai.
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 So if we are going to end now, I suggest we conclude with Vaishnav Pranam.
Jai.
Let us offer, well, I'll say the English first. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, for the sake of fire trees who can fulfill the desires of everyone and are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Nantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Ad Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat
Hare
Pranam.
Krishna,
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank